listeners. This is the STEM Pathways at BU podcast, and this one is about bioethics and synthetic biology. With us today, we have a very diverse group of panelists, so I'm very excited. We have the renowned professor, Dr. George Annis, who is a professor in the Public Health School at Boston University. He has written numerous books on medical ethics and bioethics. We also would have us Mr. Elliot Tague, of the Dr. John No Lab at Boston University. Your PhD is in Biomedical Engineering, right?
Yeah.
We also have with us Miss Sam Dorning. Did I pronounce her last name right? Dorning. Okay, and she is an undergraduate in International Relations and Political Science and is not a scientist at all. So we have a very diverse group of panelists here, and we're going to get started. So first, and I'm Rachel, as you all know. I'm the moderator. Third podcast, always forget to introduce myself. And I'm an undergraduate in Biomedical Engineering at Boston University. I'm a junior. So to get started, first, Elliot, would you please give us a good definition of what synthetic biology is?
Yeah, I can give a definition. I think first of all, I'll explain that it ranges from person to person, I believe. But I think generally speaking, it would be that we're using concepts of biology to then engineer cells in either a body or a different organism to our liking. So that can be for health applications or industrial applications and have all large-ranging application. But in general, it's trying to manipulate biology to respond to our liking, basically.
To create something that doesn't exist in nature.
Yes, in some sense.
Can you give us a couple examples of synthetic biology that are like very concrete that we can start working on?
Yeah.
And if you guys know any as well, jump in.
So, a lot of people will think about like the classic synthetic biology as biological circuits, where you will have an input to a system like a drug or a biomolecule of interest, and then it'll output something else. So you could think of some synthetic biology applications like a genetic circuit inside a cell that will detect cancer. Other applications, some of the ones that a lot of people talk about now, are using gene editing techniques to then replace different parts of the genome and also add new parts to the genome.
All right, so those are some really concrete examples. Other ones that I personally can think of that are like buzzwords in synthetic biology are something called gene drives, which I know that you're doing some work on, which is essentially where you can make a gene contagious hereditarily, so that if a parent only has one copy of a gene, you can ensure that every single offspring also receives a copy of that gene. Another one that's like a big buzzword is there's a lab in Harvard that is working on the de-extinction of the woolly mammoth. The church lab is doing that. So those are like the...
Good luck.
Yeah, honestly. I actually kind of worked on the project, and they're still at the, working on African cells, so...
At the Jurassic Park stage.
They're at the Jurassic Park stage.
Mosquitoes.
But yeah, much easier to put in gene drives and mosquitoes than try to the de-extinction of the woolly mammoth. But can we, like as a group, can we think of any issues that we could see ethically in either broadly in terms of synthetic biology as a whole, or specifically in terms of like what are the ethical consequences of trying to re-engineer the woolly mammoth? Anything like that?
I first off have a question. What you gave in regards to it's more of changing the genome to your liking was a phrase that I really immediately went to. Is there any current work going on now, and is this synthetic biology related to the controversy of changing a fetal cell to look a certain way, to have certain characteristics, if it will, adjust the gene so it can be, athletic or beautiful or smart? Is this the same type of technology that would be used to do something like that, or is this a different field?
It's the same technology, but the application of the technology to human eggs, sperm, or embryos is the most controversial part.
Is that being done right now?
No, it's being done, well, there's some research going on. Who knows? There's theoretically international consensus against actually trying to make a baby with genetic changes in it. But no one thinks it's possible to hold that
Okay.
moratorium forever, especially if China is going to be a big player. China says it's going to be a big player. Doesn't say it's going to make better babies, but it says it's going to rule genetics in the next 20 years. So if you can't, so it's one thing to get everybody in the United States to agree we're not going to do that. You know, it's a Solomar type thing where we're going to do a voluntary moratorium. It's a much harder thing to get everybody in the world to agree to something like that.
And I think that can be some of the controversial aspect of at the embryo stage, but there are some types of synthetic biology going on now that they're taking patient cells, engineering them, and putting them back in.
For cancers.
Yeah, for cancers.
Absolutely.
And
nobody has a problem with that.
Right.
Yeah. I would think that maybe that's how it starts, though.
It is how it starts. You always start with medicine.
Yeah,
Because
right.
people love medicine.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to cure disease and we're going to live longer. Great, let's do it.
Yeah, how can you
Especially if it's a baby, if it's a young child with
Yeah.
cancer. You can just do whatever you can do to keep the child alive.
Yeah, so to put it in context, right now, they're doing therapies against this cancer that affects young children, and they basically have a really low survival. And so what they've done is they've increased the survival rate to almost complete remission in certain cancers. So that's a really favorable one, I think.
Those leukemias and lymphomas, right?
Yes, exactly. And so people are wholeheartedly on board with that. I would guess that might be the gateway to getting into more and more diseases, and then where the ethical question would be, where does it stop? Because everyone can agree on disease.
At least terminal diseases, that's right.
Yeah, terminal, yeah.
And is there any research being done as far as detecting Down syndrome or autism and being able to reverse that basically in the womb or before, further development? Is that also a possibility, or is that something that's being researched?
Not much research on that, but some.
Okay.
There's a leading expert at the Mass General Hospital. That's one of his research goals, is to try to do exactly what you say, treat Down syndrome. Because right now it's like untreatable. And it is still, historically, it's been the #1 reason to terminate pregnancy.
Yes, I was just going to ask because the alternative has been to abort.
It's true.
It is detected Down syndrome. So.
I mean, not 100%, but high numbers. In Europe, higher numbers than the United States, actually. Scandinavian countries.
Really?
Yeah, they're almost 100%.
Wow.
So, yeah. We're around, the data is really not good in the United States, but we think we're around 70% of what we decide to terminate.
Wow.
I know. My fiance actually works in some of these neurogenetic diseases, and for Down syndrome and then some of these other neurological disorders, the evidence is very clear that certain genes can affect an outcome. And basically, right now we have techniques that could edit that gene to revert to the normal wild type gene or healthy type. So I think the technology exists right now in some, at least at early stages, and the question would be more so like, do you do that? Because
Yeah, well, does that have priority research or not? But that's interesting what you say, because theoretically, right, it's just an extra chromosome, usually 321 chromosomes. You should be able to turn one of them on.
Yeah,
I was just saying. Yeah, and then you should have a normal chromosome. That's interesting.
Do you know
But of course, that'll take research to try that.
yeah, and maybe Down syndrome might be a difficult one, but there are some other ones that have, there's one like Fragile X that has a specific mutation that they might be able to reverse with something like CRISPR. If that gets into another can of worms, but yeah, I think that the technology is probably at least
It's going to drive some people to try it.
Yeah.
That's probably right.
I feel like we can all agree on disease. That seems to have been the #1, consensus. But going back to, like you was said, de-extinctitizing
It's a new word.
Great word,
the de-extinction of the woolly
take off after our
mammoth.
podcast. Okay, go.
And you have to wonder how he got funding for that. I know that one of the reasons he got funding for the de-extinction of woolly mammoth was actually ethical concerns. Like he's using the fact that you could put woolly mammoths back in Siberia.
That was the craziest idea I've ever heard about.
There are links that
they'll pound
woolly
around
mammoths chop taking down trees and stuff will actually increase like snow coverage and will therefore increase light reflected back off into space and will therefore decrease the changes of climate change. That's actually a legitimate argument for the de-extinction of the woolly mammoth.
Well, it's an argument whether it's legitimate or not.
Yeah.
Pretty
Needs to be
far-fetched.
seen.
Yeah, it's not, you need lots of woolly mammoths, not just one.
That's true. And they have 2-year, what's the word that I'm thinking of? Gestation, 2 years of gestation before they can be born.
So how would that be? Would you take the entire genome of a woolly mammoth and put it into
As much as you can get.
stem
It's exactly
cell?
like Jurassic Park.
It's just exactly like Jurassic Park.
You take whatever parts of the woolly mammoth genome you have and then complete it with an elephant's genome.
And would you put that into an existing cell or like?
They'd be carried by another elephant.
But then that gets into like ethical issues by itself, right? Because there are so few elephants left on the planet that you don't want to waste, waste an elephant that could be carrying another elephant with an experimental being.
Actually promoting extinction rather than doing de-extinction, just of a different species.
Right, of a different species. But if it were over time, like those woolly mammoths, if they were able to interbreed, like if an elephant had 2 woolly mammoths, male and female, that were sexually compatible, like you wouldn't have to use the elephant anymore.
That's the idea.
But you would have to get it correct.
The idea is to use elephants as a starting point and then over multiple generations have it look like a woolly mammoth and function like a woolly mammoth by incorporating these woolly mammoth genes. And yeah, I think.
But then there's the problem of inbreeding, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the ecological minimum for mammals is something like 500 like sexually active adults to maintain genetic diversity in a population, something like that. So if you start out with 2, that's kind of difficult.
I mean, I think it's more like a parlor trick than a serious scientific endeavor. But the public loves it. The public,
Oh, sure.
You can raise money doing this. Yes. They want the carrier pigeon too. They want to bring back the carrier pigeon. There used to be billions of carrier pigeons. Now there's not. I don't know. Why do you want to bring it? No.
The carrier pigeon.
Well, I guess maybe I'm just being fantastical, but let's just say this woolly mammoth concept works, and you can take another organism's DNA, and especially if you have a decent portion of it, and put it into a living organism. Could you do that with a pre-existing person? Like if you had somebody, let's say you had somebody who is deceased, and you had their, maybe I'm going into sci-fi
world. You're doing good.
Maybe I'm going into sci-fi world here. But if you had a deceased person, and you took their entire DNA and implemented
one live cell,
and you would implement it into a surrogate, could you recreate that person, that exact person?
So they recently did it with primates. And so they cloned the DNA in primates. So it's like a twin more so than the same person. It's genetically identical. And so yes, but if they can do it with small primates,
theoretically,
they could. Yeah, they could theoretically. Yeah,
it's a delayed twin. It's not a true twin.
Yeah,
it's not at the same time. It's going to have a different environment. It's not going to be the same person.
Yeah,
definitely not the same person.
Yeah, exactly.
But if
it's going to look like the same person.
But if the entire genome is the same, and all of the characteristics, I know that you have like your environment that influences you, but if you have all of those characteristics,
a lot.
Okay.
Because I know as much as your genome.
And there's also epigenetic.
Absolutely. We have no idea about how epigenetics works.
What is epigenetics?
Epigenetics, so epi is outside the genome, or on top. Oh yeah, sorry. Latin terminology. But basically, it's other modifications to the DNA itself, and it's a new field of research, or relatively new, and there's not that much known, where you can have wide-ranging effects on gene expression and things like that based on your epigenome. So there's a famous study where the famines from grandparents actually affected grandchildren's gene expression. So it's not, the bottom of the line is, just because you're genetically identical doesn't mean that your epigenome is the same, doesn't mean that your environment is the same, so it's definitely not the same person. But then I would think that it is likely feasible to clone humans a lot of the technologies there in, primates and other animals. And so,
So no one's thought of a good reason to clone you.
Right, yeah, it would just.
It's one
be
thing to
for
make a better
curiosity.
baby,
Yeah.
we can argue about later, but to make it genetically the same thing again.
Well,
You have to have
you could-
a major ego to want it. The only child I'll accept is one that's just like me.
Well, didn't that famous actress recently clone her deceased dog?
Her dog, dog is one thing.
Yeah.
That turns out to be much harder to do than people thought too.
yeah.
It's really hard to clone a dog. You can do it. Costs lots of money and takes lots of time. And it's not the same dog. That's
It's not the same
Yeah.
dog.
It's not going to recognize you.
I also think I think cloning humans is not as, it's not as, and you can correct me if you're wrong, but it's not as large of an ethical debate because people, at this point, I don't think are considering it heavily. I think the thing that people are considering more is editing your own genome or your progeny, like embryonic engineering for better humans, or
And then there's the whole issue, right? And I don't know if this has been fixed yet, and you can correct me on this, that when you clone something, you're taking an adult genome and putting it into an egg cell. So you have, like, if there's, like, yeah, so DNA, it decreases in, cleanliness, for lack of a better word, over time. Your telomere shortens.
I was gonna say telomere, I remember that. I remember that word, I remember that from making bio.
Yeah. Your telomere shorten, you'll undoubtedly have some genetic modifications that were not there when you were born. And so you're using DNA that is already predisposed to having had mutations and epigenetic changes that were not originally there. So
Basically, genetics is much more complicated than anybody thought.
yeah.
Back in the cloning days, really.
Especially with the human genome project, we thought if we could just sequence the human genome, we could
That's
solve
it.
all
Everything.
genetic diseases, and here we are 18 years later.
Remember, all the famous scientists that worked on this their whole lives guessed that there were 100,000 to 200,000 genes. It comes out to be 20,000. So just, each gene has to do at least 5 times as many things as we thought.
Right.
And then they interact with each
I was
other.
gonna say they're all interconnected.
And then try to predict that. And all affected by the environment as well.
So in order to, let's just say we're in the conversation of making a better baby. If you're aiming at a certain goal, you want someone to be predisposed to be athletic or musically inclined or intelligent, you wouldn't be just changing one gene. It's not just an on and off switch. You would have to completely remake the entire structure of the genome.
The epigenome.
Well, by changing one gene, you can affect more than one gene. That's what we don't know.
And so one example would be sickle cell anemia is a one single base pair.
I think that would be very easy to do.
Yeah, and so that is something that's actually, they're trying to do adult therapies, gene therapies to correct that, and with gene editing. And so to answer the question, yeah, one gene could definitely change a person. However, they're usually very interconnected.
So even changing something like height would be a multi-gene problem and an environmental problem. I have a pair of cousins who are identical twins. They're genetically identical. They are identical twins, but one of them was born at 3 pounds and one of them was born at 4 pounds. And the 4-pound baby is now 2 inches taller than his twin brother, who is genetically identical. So that's the only way you can tell them apart. That's the only way you can tell them apart because they're identical.
No, the uterine environment matters too.
A lot.
A lot, that's right.
That's why fetal alcohol syndrome is a thing and other problems.
Yeah.